Hey Amar, welcome to day 1000.
Thank you.
Amar, I think the kind of things you've done, so many people, today would want to replicate for themselves one day. Working in the valley, being a top operator for, one of India's largest startups, being at the CEO position for Myntra, and then, launching your own company, raising a large amount of sizable rounds, I guess, in the first 3 years, and, doing something really interesting in the fast fashion space, right? But before we get into all of that, I want to kind of take you back to when you were starting, your company. Why don't you first just give us some background about you and what your company does today?
Sure. I am from Tirupati, a very small but well known temple town in the country. I think the city gave me, or the town gave me, the kind of upbringing that made me appreciate everything around me. So that's core in the value system of whatever I do even today. I think if I look back, the way I would connect my career moves is whenever the opportunity presented my way, I just jumped into it, did not try to stay in my comfort zone, did not try to blend into what the industry was doing or the market was doing or what my colleagues were doing or what my fellow students from college were doing. If the problem sounded exciting, I just jumped into it. But one thing that I did bring into everything that I went into was my engineering mindset. At some point of time, the problem statement became much bigger than a problem statement and started becoming a purpose. And that's how I actually ended up becoming an entrepreneur. Yeah, I mean, it was not at all planned one. Like I said, it's one thing connecting to the other.
Incredible. What was the story behind launching your company? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, okay, like I said, when I went into Myntra from Flipkart, the one of the biggest challenges that I had to deal with was the inventory that was lying around. My biggest challenge was to figure out what was really happening there. I mean, since I was literally an outsider, I still feel I'm an outsider to the fashion industry, which is allowing me to ask as stupid questions as possible because I want to understand what is really happening. The more and more time I spent on it, it quickly became obvious to me that it was not a Myntra problem; it was an industry problem. I mean, if you just Google today on how much fashion sells in the fresh season, only 1 in 3 is ever sold. The remaining two either are going through a markdown pricing, aka discounting, or might even end up in a landfill. And I started asking, why are we even doing this? Where is this even going wrong? So it exposed me to a traditional supply chain system that the industry has been using for decades, if not centuries, which is technically a designer taking a bet on what consumers would wear down the line in the future, and the entire supply chain system has been designed to make it in a scale efficient way, but not in a time relevant way. What does it mean? The industry has built infrastructures to make thousands of same styles rather than making thousand styles of small quantities. The difference is when you make a style of enormous quantity, you're just hoping that you would sell all of them. Otherwise, you're looking at unsold inventory. And in this age of social, where the trend life cycles are being compressed significantly, any such bets are being punished very, very rigorously. And that's when it occurred to me. It is actually much more than a business problem. The amount of resources that went into making an inventory which was never sold, it was a colossal waste of everything from working capital to the fabrics to the human capital, everything that was going into making inventory. So again, one thing led to the other. That's when I realized that, hey, fast industry is not going to change if you just sell it in a new format. It is going to change if you change the product itself. And that's why the Virgio started. Virgio, like many people think, is not a D2C brand. We are actually a supply chain company. In fact, I keep saying this. We are not a fashion company using technology. We are a technology company building fashion. For us, the most important thing is the designs are not coming from any of us. It's coming from the consumers. We have built technology to listen to consumers at scale and react to that in real time so that we make the right product at the right time in the right quantity so that the overall consumption is very, very efficient and not resulting in any kind of wastage. And that's what makes us truly sustainable than the most of the sustainable fashion brands out there.
Incredible. I think what a fantastic insight to, I think build your entire proposition on. Very much needed as well in today's world. Tell me, when you started, on day zero, how did you approach getting clients? While of course there's a lot of authority you come with your prior experience, it's always, hard to tell anybody, hey, I'm going to challenge your legacy supply chain system, which you know very well. How did you really go about, the initial conversations and get your first few clients?
We're a B2C company. And we are not a B2B company. While there is this theory out there that B2B, building a B2B company is easier, it has its own challenges. For me, B2C company has its challenges, but it also, getting your first 100 customers is not that hard in the age of social. But retaining them is the hardest. And the way you can retain them is how authentic you are and how transparent you are about the product, about the story behind the product. So from day one, it has been very, very obvious to everyone who's been on this journey with me is that we walk the talk. If this is what we promise we give the consumer, we will make sure we give the same to the consumer. There were many times in last 2 years where the product was almost ready to ship, but we were not comfortable placing it in a consumer's hand. So we just discontinued. The classic example is when we started Beyond the Curve, the line that we started for all the curvy women out there, along with Anjali. Anjali Anand is our co-creator. We were 2 days away from launching the collection, and I just did not like the way the collection came out to be. So we just dumped everything, and then we again went back to the whiteboard. So that obsession with what we want to give to the consumer and staying true to it and making sure we take consumer feedback at every single step of the journey. So what you can do when you have 100 customers is what you should strive to do when you have a million customers. That's when you can keep growing. And that's exactly what we're doing every day.
Fantastic. So you say in your space, I believe it's fairly easier to maybe employ some smart strategies to get your first sale. But it's the repeat sale which is the real challenge, which comes through, as you said, just more care and attention, which will probably lead to more retention. And I guess you also mentioned an authenticity. But I'll tell you, right, the initial pitch you made, usually founders have that initial vision as well. When you're getting your first customers, do you translate that same communication as well? Because then I wonder, am I buying a conscious clothing brand? Am I buying you because your algorithms figured out what will work? Like how do you really communicate that to the end customer? What are you really doing?
See, the thing is, whenever you're building a product, the first thing you need to communicate to the consumer is the goodness that you're offering to the consumer first before the broader goodness, right? Which is the reason why, if you look at Virgio, none of our primary marketing campaigns is around sustainability or around our supply chain. It's actually about the trend. I'll tell you what, with the kind of investments we made in technology to make sure we can stay relevant at every single point of time rather than being relevant at some point in time is allowing us to react to every trend out in the market. So from a consumer point of view, they found Virgio as a brand which is making very trendy fashion with natural fabrics at an affordable price. They don't know what is really happening behind the scenes. They don't have to know until they start noticing, hey, how is this brand doing so consistently? Now, if you look at after 2 years of our journey, we started talking about our supply chain because we got this request from a lot of our consumers that, hey, how are you guys even able to do it? Most of the brands, I mean, if you look at the most of the fashion labels or the brands that happen in last 5 to 6 years, so-called D2C brands, there are two sets of brands. There are brands which are white labeling goods from cheaper markets like China, where you don't have a product differentiation. So you don't have a story of your own. All you're doing is an influencer led marketing to get your sales. That is, in my view, a very short lived thing, unless and until you have a significant differentiation in terms of the kind of goods that you get onto the platform. The other side is people who are very design centric or utility centric. Like there are brands which have been created around certain designs, certain fabrics, certain colors, or certain aspects of life. Like it could be running, it could be yoga, it could be work, it could be this thing. What happens is these brands actually have a better story to tell than these white label brands. But the point is, at some point of time, you're only serving a certain need states of the consumer. For you to serve a more need states to retain the customer for a longer time, you need to go out of your comfort zone. And that's exactly where your expertise is actually working against you. The advantage that we have is we do not come from a design first mindset. We come from a consumer first mindset where we listen to consumers on what they're looking for. This allowed us to operate in a very agile and responsive way to the consumer. And that's how we are staying ahead of the curve. So the infrastructure that we put into place is helping us react to every single trend at the right time in the right amount of investment bet so that if for any reason any of these bets go wrong, we can quickly move on from it.
Absolutely. I think really interesting, as I think the whole mechanic of how you approach this particular problem. I feel uh, another aspect I would love to cover now is when you have something unique like this and when you raise the kind of funding you have, right, tens of millions of dollars, there's a lot of pressure for growth, right? and you need to essentially move really fast. Even when I think you were in hypergrowth companies, would have, I'm assuming, had those KPIs to reach, and in that whole process, you end up kind of making a lot of spends you regret. I don't know, as a first time founder after being at scale, that was something which affected you. But could you share, for all the people in that first 1,000 days, what are some spends you end up regretting and something they could take away from there?
See, I think let me actually talk about this popular misconception about, hey, this guy has been a CEO, so it must be easy for him to run a startup. Let me break the myth here. It's actually the other way. Experience might give you confidence, but not conviction,
Mm,
because confidence comes from the past. Conviction is all about future, right? Where on the night when I decided to quit Mintra, I did not sleep. I was shit scared. The reason why I was scared is, hey, am I doing the stupid thing? Am I doing the craziest thing? But it's somewhere in this thought process, it occurred to me that I'm convinced that this is a supply chain fashion industry needs, and it requires an outsider to build it. It's like how Elon has done to auto industry, right? Tesla is not an auto company. It's a tech company making cars. It took somebody from outside the industry to show the industry how cars are made and how cars should be made. So somewhere that conviction gave me the confidence that, hey, let me do it. And I tell you this, right? If you're not scared, then you should not get into this journey. If Because if you're not scared, then you're going to do something from your comfort zone, which technically means that it is not going to be any different from what you already are doing. So you should
right.
not actually make this move. The second thing is the people thing, right? A lot of people came along with me in this journey from Mintra, and the naive me thought that it would work. The problem is these are very great people, some of the best talent in the country, but the context is not the same. What Mintra offered is a platform or as a safe environment or a system, all systems in place where a great talent can flourish. And now we are talking about a 0 to 1 journey where you're literally rewriting or writing every single rule in your rule book. So some of this great talent felt lost. That, hey, I don't think I'm the right person for this, and it's come at a cost to us. It's come at a cost to them as well, right? I mean, they took a time off or break from their existing job to join a startup journey to go back into the corporates where they feel they can do a great job, and which I also believe that. I mean, they are great talent, but it just did not work. So that was the second learning. And the third learning, which is something that came from Mintra, which I carry from it. If there is one thing that I carry forward from Mintra journey, is I was the CEO of Myntra during COVID. Okay, the hardest times for any CEO, right, globally. And for most part of my time in Myntra during that COVID time, one of the things that I actually had to do every single day was to check how many employees, how many of my team members are infected. Did they get the right medical attention? So it kind of grew a compassion in me to see the team in a different way. It was a
Mm,
time when I learned that when you put people over everything else, the rest of the things will fall in place. So today, the three things that I actually carry into this journey is fearless curiosity. I want to question everything, and I want everybody on the floor to also question everything. Do not take anything for granted. Question the status quo. The second thing is what we talk about as be comfortable doing the uncomfortable thing. If you are finding it uncomfortable, then you must be doing something right. Yeah.
mm.
And the third thing is the compassionate ambition. That you need to have ambition as a startup or as any business, but it needs to be compassionate. Growth should not come at the cost of your team, cost of the planet, cost of the consumer. So that's how we actually see uh, the journey. I'm not saying it's easy for anyone, and this journey was not meant to be easy. And if it was easy, then the world would have been a different place.
Absolutely. I mean, what a fantastic point you made when it came to, I think, the 0 to 1 versus the growth team, right? And often people think it's a negative when they hear the same team which will get you from 0 to 50 won't be the people who will get you to 550 to 5,000, right? And they're like, oh, you need better people. I'm like, no, you need different people actually, and that's why I wanted to kind of unpack that, right? Kind of, let's say I'm a founder. I'm in the first 1,000 days. I have a few $1 million in my bank. I can potentially hire a lot of senior people or at least one really senior person. I could also go the other way around. How do I really know who's better for 0 to 1?
I'll actually tell you, or probably answer this question in a different way. The money in the bank, the best use of money in the bank is to make more and more experiments and learn from your experiments, even if it means that you're going to fail at most of them. It's not to hire experts who will probably help you from failing, but will definitely not help you in innovating. experts don't innovate. It's that naive, crazy, young mindsets. I'm very clear. Young mindsets, not necessarily young people, young mindsets who can actually be experimentative in every single thing. I mean, so my only advice is if you have money in the bank, go get people who are hungry to do crazy things and allow yourself to fail and learn from it. Not hire experts and sit in some ivory tower hoping that everything will fall in place.
Fantastic. I absolutely love that. I want to now go to the last question. Amar, we're almost at time, and I would love to understand from you what's your experience on underrated versus overrated channels of customer acquisition. I know that's very subjective, very experimentative. The idea is to maybe learn from your journey. I think you again were at scale. Again, you are doing a 0 to 1, trying to understand that if in my first 1,000 days I'm trying to crack my marketing channel, what should be the approach?
So, the most, again, before I answer this question, let me actually tell you how customer acquisition as a strategy works, especially in a B2C company. It's a herd mentality, right? If a brand says, hey, this is work for me, everybody tries to do the same thing without understanding, is this relevant for me? And one of the most overrated ones is influencer led marketing because everybody is doing the same thing to a point where now everybody wants to be an influencer because there are a lot of brands asking them to do whatever they're doing. But somewhere in this process, the relevance of the influencers is lost. And that would affect the brand in the long term because the authenticity is not being established. The underrated ones are the slow ones, but will yield a very, very strong impact on you, on your brand. The most underrated one is a community. Build a community of consumers who can become the champions or the ambassadors for your brand. Listen to them, make them feel that they are being valued. We have a community where we listen to every single feedback they give. I am active on all social channels. When a customer complains, I am the first person to react before my sales team reacts. In fact, there's an internal race between us, like who's going to react first. It's part of the culture, right? You have to listen to the consumer. But having said that, there is, like you said, you need oxygen in this journey, and that's where the influencer-led marketing comes in. But if you look at the influencer-led marketing that we are doing as Virgio, it's the kind of influencers we choose are the people who are very relevant to us. We're not choosing a influencer who is talking about yoga in the morning and talking about a beer in the evening. We take influencers who have been relevant to fashion. So there's a bit of work being done in our case, and my social team has done a fantastic job of sorting out these influencers who are more relevant to the story that we want to say.
But
But
I
at the
wanted to
same time,
follow up on that, right? So
yeah.
when you say that this strategy is working for you in influencer marketing, what is working for you? Because honestly, sometimes people treat every influencer as a captive database to target, right? And then they go deeper into the database saying that is this database similar to my customer segment? Is it more that, or is it more towards is this influencer's brand and values matching mine? Which one is it, and why is it that important?
See, there are three things to this. The first and the foremost is the relevance of the influencer to your consumer segment. We are not actually going and interacting with every influencer with a dream of actually turning every one of their followers into our consumers. We know who our consumers are, and then we are looking at who are our consumers following. And then we go talk to them to say, hey, is this a narrative that you are willing to say? So that's the most important part of it. Second thing is you need to also maintain a healthy frequency with the same influencer. Since this set of people are very limited and are not as many as you would like them to be, so we actually do a repeat communication through these influencers so that the face registers over a period of time. Now, the third one, the most important one, is the content itself. Just because you have a great influencer doesn't mean you're going to register. You need to be very, very clear about what the content is going to get registered with the consumer. So all the three have to come into place, which is what I keep saying, right? It's RFC. It's relevance, frequency, and content.
I have a parting thought, which I would like to extract from you. While I think these three bits genuinely help, the hardest part about the first 1,000 days is getting through them, right? You need that crazy resilience. What's been your learning? How do you really be resilient in the first 1,000 days?
I think one of the most important things I've learned as a founder, which I was not when I was a CEO, I think I'm one of those very few founders in the country who became the CEO first and then became the founder.
Yes.
So my journey has been anything but conventional. One of the things that I've really learned in this journey is to be myself. I'm not trying to be a polished leader. I'm being myself where I expose my insecurities, my doubts, my vulnerabilities to the team because the authenticity matters in every single step of the journey. right? I'm not trying to put up a brave face. I don't want to give them a false hope. At the same time, I don't want to abstract them from what is really happening on the floor. And if you ask me, how did it help me? I don't know how it helped the team, but it's definitely helping me, because when I exposed my true self to my team, it's the team that stepped up and got me through some of the toughest days. So one thing I can proudly say is it's not the founders that keep startups alive. It's the team that keeps founders alive.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amar. This has been so awesome. Like I absolutely love when, people give really articulated bullet point answers. It really helps me learn very, very fast. So
So
it was a
thank you.
great time and I hope you also enjoyed.
Oh, it was a lovely conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on this.
This is true, true pleasure. And for everybody who stuck along, thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to hear another founder, please subscribe to our channels and a new episode will come out very, very soon. Bye.